For decades, we've been told one story about Singapore's independence, a shocking, painful expulsion from Malaysia. But what if I told you that wasn't the whole truth? That hidden away in recently declassified documents is the story of a secret, high-stakes negotiation that completely flips the script on how this nation was born. We're going to pull back the curtain on how that separation was actually secretly engineered.
We've all seen this image, right? It's August 9th, 1965. Singapore's founding Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew is on camera, and he just breaks down. You can see he's exhausted, hadn't slept in 3 days. The emotion feels so raw, so genuine, so full of shock. And this single moment, well, it pretty much cemented the whole narrative. Singapore, the reluctant nation, cast out and forced into independence completely against its will. A story of pure heartbreak.
But here's the question that changes everything. Was it really such a surprise? Was that anguish just about the shock of being kicked out, or was something else going on? Something way more complex? Well, these declassified files, they suggest that those very public tears were hiding a secret reality, one that was only known to a tiny handful of people.
So what we now know is that the story we've heard for years, that Malaysia just unilaterally expelled Singapore, is only a piece of the puzzle. The truth, as the files show, was a much more nuanced and complicated process. Turns out, this was a secretly negotiated separation, engineered behind closed doors by leaders on both sides who had come to the same very grim conclusion.
Okay, so to understand why separation became really the only choice, you have to go back to the beginning. You have to look at the foundation of the union itself, which honestly was fundamentally flawed from day one. When the merger happened in 1963, it was a clash of two totally irreconcilable visions for what a country should even be.
The conflict was just fundamental. On one side, you had Lee Kuan Yew's PAP fighting for a Malaysian Malaysia, a secular, multiracial society where merit, not race, was what mattered. But on the other side, you had Malaysia's Prime Minister, Tunku Abdul Rahman, and his party, who were absolutely determined to keep it a Malay-led federation with special privileges for the Malay community. British officials at the time literally described it as a battle between the old feudalist and the socialist intellectual. There was just no way to square that circle.
And you know, this wasn't just some polite philosophical debate. The PAP went and contested elections on the mainland, and Lee Kuan Yew gave this absolutely electrifying speech in the Malaysian parliament that was seen as a direct challenge to the entire ruling class. And that just lit the fuse. Hardliners were screaming for his arrest, but Lee himself, he feared something much worse. He actually said later that he was more afraid of being assassinated, that one day a Malay will show me a parang rather than a handshake. The whole thing had reached a boiling point.
So, with tensions about to explode and the very real threat of bloodshed in the air, the story takes this incredible dramatic turn. Far away from the public eye, key players on both sides start working on a radical and totally secret solution.
And at the heart of all this new evidence is a top-secret file, codenamed the Albatross File. It was started by one of Singapore's most important ministers, Dr. Goh Keng Swee. So why the Albatross? Well, because to him, a real pragmatist, the union with Malaysia had become this massive burden, an albatross hanging around Singapore's neck. And for them to survive, it had to be cut loose. The split was basically planned in these secret parallel steps. It all started when Dr. Goh just decided the merger had failed. But here's the crazy part. Thousands of miles away, in a London clinic, the Tunku was coming to the exact same conclusion. He writes a secret letter to his deputy saying they have to cut out Singapore. And that letter, it created the secret opening for Dr. Goh and Malaysia's deputy PM to start designing the breakup. Only then was Lee Kuan Yew brought in, and he was deeply reluctant, but he gave his consent because he saw it as the only way to prevent violence. When the final agreement was signed and brought to Lee, his reaction wasn't shock at all. It was this kind of grim relief. He said, "We have pulled off a bloodless coup." Think about that. This wasn't an expulsion. It was a political revolution, carried out in total secrecy, right under the noses of the British, who had pushed for the merger in the first place. So, the secret deal was done. But actually pulling it off created this absolutely frantic 48-hour scramble that caused a massive diplomatic firestorm. Because while all this was being finalized, the one group that saw themselves as the guardians of the region, the British, were completely, and I mean completely, in the dark.
The declassified telegrams from this period read like something out of a spy thriller. It all kicks off on the evening of August 8th. The British High Commissioner, Lord Head, gets this cryptic tip from an informant inside the cabinet. He then starts driving frantically all over Kuala Lumpur. and he finally finds the Tunku at a rooftop restaurant just to confirm the rumor, and the news just sends him into a total spin. He begs them for a 24-hour delay just to stop it, but he's flatly refused.
Lord Head's emergency telegram back to London just perfectly captures his shock and helplessness. He described the Malaysian leaders as being obstinate in the way of conscious sinners. I mean, can you imagine? The British, the former colonial masters, had been completely outplayed. Their entire strategy for the region was collapsing, and there was absolutely nothing they could do to stop it.
But wait, there was another, equally intense drama happening right inside Singapore's own camp. Two of Lee Kuan Yew's most senior ministers, Dr. To Ching Chai and S. Rajaratnam, they just flat out refused to sign the separation agreement. For them, it was unthinkable, a total betrayal. These were the guys who had architected the whole Malaysia idea, and to just abandon it felt like giving up on everything they had fought for.
Lee's response was just brutal. He gave his colleagues a stark choice. He told them, if you want to carry on, you carry on, but you accept the responsibility for a bloodbath, and the threat of massive communal violence was very, very real. That ultimatum sobered them up fast. Reluctantly, with their dreams shattered, they signed a paper.
And so on August 9, 1965, Singapore was independent. But, surviving the political split was one thing. Surviving as a tiny, completely defenseless new nation, that was another thing entirely. Those first days of independence were, without a doubt, the most dangerous in its entire history.
The new country was immediately surrounded by threats. Just days after the split, Malaysia was threatening military occupation over a trade dispute. Indonesia was actively waging an undeclared war against the whole region. And inside Singapore, police uncovered and smashed a communist plot to assassinate the entire cabinet. And to face all of this, Singapore had an army of just 2 battalions, most of whom weren't even Singaporeans. It was completely and utterly vulnerable.
The threat was so severe, so personal, that Lee Kuan Yew was told he couldn't even stay in his own home. He had to move his entire family to this small, secure cottage right next to a British Royal Air Force base, just to be safe. This wasn't some theoretical danger. This was an immediate, day-to-day fight for survival.
So, in the end, what this declassified story really shows us is that Singapore's independence wasn't an accident. It wasn't a simple expulsion. It was a secret, calculated choice made by leaders on both sides to avoid a total catastrophe. A painful divorce, yes, but one born from a conflict that couldn't be solved. And it really leaves us with one last, big question. Was this traumatic, secret split the one desperate act that in the end ensured the survival of both nations? The file suggests it just might have been.